We call the meeting to order. I don't know. Thank you for joining us. It is June 20th, and we will start. We have our city council regular meeting, and we'll start with roll call, please. Councillor Beltmans, Mayor Pro Tem Buell. Here. Councillor Woodruff.
Here.
Councillor Yazzie. Here. Mayor Youssef. Here.
Here, thank you. May we have the introduction of the translator, please?
Good evening, y'all. I'll go ahead and share this message in Spanish first and then repeat in English. Entonces, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Joshua Stallings y voy a ser su intérprete hoy también con mi colega Diego Pons y estamos trabajando con la Cooperativa Comunitaria de Lenguaje. Queremos agradecerles por su compromiso con la justicia del lenguaje, lo cual significa que todas las personas aquí tienen el derecho de comunicar en el idioma de su corazón, lo que sea inglés o español. Entonces vamos a estar interpretando simultáneamente y una vez que termine de hablar vamos a activar esta función de interpretación. Entonces si está participando en una computadora va a aparecer un icono de globo terráqueo en la barra de navegación al parte inferior de su pantalla. Se puede elegir este icono para seleccionar el idioma de preferencia. Y si está participando en la aplicación de Zoom de un teléfono o tableta, se puede elegir los 3 puntitos para seleccionar su idioma de preferencia. Si usted es bilingüe, no es necesario elegir un idioma. Y muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros hoy. So, my name is Joshua Stallings. I'll be your interpreter this afternoon with Diego Pons, who is my colleague with the Community Language Cooperative. And we want to thank you all for your commitment to language justice again today, meaning that the people in the space have the right to speak in the language of their heart, whether that's in English or in Spanish, and be heard in that language. Once I finish speaking, we'll go ahead and turn on the simultaneous interpretation feature. And so a quick reminder, if you're on a computer, that globe icon will appear on the navigation bar at the bottom of your screen to select your preferred language. And if you're on a Zoom application on a phone or tablet, you'll select the 3 dots that say more and then your preferred language. And if you're bilingual in both languages, don't worry about choosing a language. And thank you so much for your time tonight. And we're good to go ahead and turn on the interpretation feature.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I just wanted to, for the record, let you know that Councillor Bosman's absence tonight was excused at the last meeting. All right, with that, can we please move on to identification of actual or perceived conflicts of interest? Anyone, council? No? Myself, neither. So then with that, we will move on to proclamations. We have 2 tonight. The first one is going to be from our Mayor Pro Tem. I'll let her take it from here.
Sure. The first one is the Durango Botanic Gardens proclamation. Do we have someone accepting that? Excellent. Do you want to meet me up?
Yep.
I'm presenting this next week at the actual event, so I'm going to do it today too, so I get practice, and then I'll be so good next week. Awesome in person for everybody. All right. Durango Botanic Gardens proclamation, June 20th, 2023. Whereas the mission of the Durango Botanic Gardens is creating public gardens for demonstration, education, and inspiration. And whereas the Durango Botanic Gardens designs, develops, and maintains the gardens at the Durango Public Library. And whereas since 2010, the Durango Botanic Gardens have made lasting improvements to the grounds of the library with artwork and plants that thrive in Southwest Colorado, which are accessible to everyone at no cost. And whereas the newest addition to the Botanic Gardens is the Literary Garden, with initiation of construction in 2021, involving six themed gardens: Indigenous, Youth, Southwest, El Jardín Botánico, Classics, and Contemporary. And whereas the successful completion of the Literary Garden links authors that have used gardens for inspiration and the strong connection between the gardens and the library. Now, therefore, I, Jessica Buell, Mayor Pro Tem of Durango, Colorado, do hereby proclaim June 29th, 2023 as the dedication of the Literary Gardens and encourage citizens to join the community celebration at 4 p.m. at the Durango Public Library. Or I keep it to present it then, or give it to, okay, perfect. I have another one for the other.
Did you sign it?
Yes. Perfect. And then you can speak.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Buell. We'll see you at the dedication on Thursday, June 29, beginning at 3:30. All of you are welcome. And I want to thank in particular City Council for the support, not just for the proclamation, but for financially. Your funding was an important kickstart to getting this garden built, as was over 150 individual donors, ranging from people who would hand me a $10 bill to a $25,000 check. So this is truly a community project, and we appreciate all the support from the community. And again, we hope to see you're all welcome to this dedication beginning at 3:30 on Thursday, June 29, because it's kind of a tribute to our relationship with the library, because we try to, in our plant selection, our plant collection, just demonstrate how important nature and gardens in particular have been to influencing many of our favorite works of literature. You'd be surprised if you walk through the garden, we have examples of plants and so forth that have been featured, again, in some of your favorite works of literature. So again, thank you, City Council. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Buell. And you're welcome to join us on Thursday, June 29.
And we have another proclamation today for National Boys and Girls Club Week. Do we have someone to accept the proclamation? Hey. So I'm going to go ahead and read that proclamation today. This is for National Boys and Girls Club Week, June 26th to the 30th, 2023. Whereas the greater a community's investment in its children, the greater return it will realize when they become adults. Whereas children are the foundation on which our future success is built. Whereas children seek parents, mentors, and friends to aid them in reaching important goals. And whereas families and communities play vital roles in helping children develop a positive self-image, sense of belonging, and sense of competence. And whereas the Boys and Girls Club of La Plata County serves over 1,700 community youth each year through club membership, engaging programs, fun activities, and school and community outreach. And whereas the Boys and Girls Club of La Plata County provides essential programming during the times that children and families need us most, after school as well as during the summer. And whereas Boys and Girls Club Week is a special week set aside to highlight the work that is done at the Boys and Girls Clubs to promote academic success, healthy lifestyles, and good character and citizenship. And whereas Boys and Girls Club Week emphasizes the importance of meaningful time spent with kids during this week and every week all year long. Now, therefore, I, Melissa Youssef, Mayor of Durango, Colorado, do hereby proclaim June 26th through 30th as the Boys and Girls Club Week for youth in La Plata County, and call upon all citizens to join together in recognizing and commending the Boys and Girls Club organizations in our area for providing their contributions and commitment to improving the lives of the children and young adults in our community. Would you like to say a few words, please?
We would. Yes, we would. Hi, I'm Tiffany Lee. I'm the La Plata County Clerk, but I'm also on the Board of Directors for Boys and Girls Club. And I want to introduce Michelle and Alex. Michelle is our 2023 Youth of the Year for La Plata County and an incoming freshman at Fort Lewis College, as well as she works at the club right now. The first family member of her family to attend college. And Alex is going into 7th grade this fall at Escalante. So I'm honored to be here with them. Michelle might say a few words in a moment, but I am here again on behalf of the Board of Directors. So I'm going to read this because it's coming from the entire board. So thank you, Council. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Boys and Girls Club of La Plata County, the club is thrilled to be a leader in youth development, serving more kids year-round outside school time than any other youth servicing organization. We have built in Durango over the last 15 years, thanks to community leaders and generous investors, has enabled us to bring the club experience to kids throughout Southwest Colorado.
increasing the impact on youth in Durango as well as Bayfield and Mancos. Being a champion for youth means advocating for organizations, including the club, to ensure quality youth development programs that support academic success, the development of good character and citizenship values, and the development of healthy lifestyle behaviors for the benefit of kids and their families, and ultimately the greater community. We applaud you for your leadership and advocacy for the children and teens of our community. So thank you so much for the support of the council as always, and for our community. Thank you. Michelle?
I just would like to say how honored and privileged I am to be here today to represent something that's just means so much to me and my family, and how my brother and I just succeed in every way. So thank you so much for doing all of this.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 6, public participation in person and via Zoom. So I want to be very clear with the community that this section of the agenda is set aside for the public to provide 3 minutes of comments or ask questions regarding items that are not scheduled for a public hearing on this agenda. For those items scheduled for a public hearing in section 11, we will have public comment for those items during the agenda item itself. We will take general comment during this portion of the agenda, and we will take public comment on this section of the agenda as well for items 13.1 and 13.2. So if you wish to speak about the resolutions authorizing the lodger's tax overage or the resolution to implement an enhanced demand-based parking strategy at high occupancy parking meters, you would speak to that now in this section. Again, we limit comment to 3 minutes. Council will not respond to questions from the dais, and citizens should address their comments directly to City Council. And with that, it looks like we have a few people that would like to speak today. Rachel Brown. And if you could just say if you're a resident of the city or county.
Good evening, Mayor Youssef and councilors. I'm Rachel Brown, Executive Director of Visit Durango, and I am a county resident. Part of tonight's agenda is a discussion of a resolution allocation for the 2022 lodger's tax overage. Tom Sluice will be presenting on this topic later in the meeting and asks that I introduce our request during the public comment section. Most of you are familiar with our request from the original discussion at the June 6th study session. As was explained at that meeting and in a follow-up email to council, Visit Durango is requesting $245,500 of the lodger's tax overage for the 55% for sustainable tourism marketing. We have earmarked several projects which were forced to cut from this year's budget when, after negotiating with the city, were given less in our contractual agreement than we had originally anticipated. Our request includes funding for local events, tourism-related infrastructure enhancement projects, and our destination advancement grant. One piece of information which I learned today and wanted to share with you all is that our destination advancement grant round 1 for this year just closed. We received 7 applications for a total funding request of $73,000. Requests include MANA, Powerhouse, Durango Trails, Botanic Gardens, and others. Because this is just round 1 of 2 for this fund, we could definitely use additional funding for that for this year. In regards to our total request of $245,500, all of these projects would be in the destination management or sustainability category of our budget, none for marketing, sales, operations, or the Welcome Center, and would all be considered programs to enhance quality of life for locals. Please note, approximately 2/3 of these funds would be direct pass-through back into the community for nonprofits, event organizers, and business grants. If council or staff have feedback on how our request can be restructured, we are happy to do so. I will be here through the meeting. And if you have questions for me later on during this topic, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Victor Locke.
Good evening, councilors, and welcome to Councilors Yasi and Woodruff. I'm speaking, I guess, about 13-1 in a way. I'd like to request this evening that this Durango City Council complete a city art project that was begun 7 years ago, finished 5 years ago, but which has never been installed as intended. It was probably the most citizen-intensive project Durango has seen in decades. Local artists Allison Lee Smith and Bryce Pettit prevailed in a city process to select the artists to complete an artwork that would be placed in the medians of the 551-60 interchange, one of the gateways to the city. It was named Common Threads. It called on city residents, young and old alike, to come up with symbols that define what makes Durango the great place it is. Over the course of a year, starting in 2016, 22 public outreach sessions were held at schools, the farmers market, at community meetings, and more. More than 400 residents, students in 6 schools, 7 interns, and 6 professional Durango artists contributed to this project. The project was made possible by the National Endowment for the Arts, the City of Durango Public Art Commission, and Durango resident Mark McWhirter of Pacific Metal Cutting. Mark stepped up and provided steel as well as laser cutting of the artwork, and then covered the shipping and delivery of the finished panels to the City Service Center, where they remain to this day. I believe we have a picture of those. So there's Common Threads, 6 years later, after it was completed. Mark McWhirter passed away in the spring of 2020, unable to see the fruits of his enormous contribution. The project went to bid twice prior to the pandemic, but the installation costs in the bids exceeded the budget at the time. After the pandemic, it became impossible to get bids from companies, either overwhelmed with construction demands following the pandemic created somewhat housing boom, or the shortage of workers caused by the Great Resignation. Last week, I sent an email to all city councilors concerning the need to complete Common Threads. Councilor Jessica Buell responded. In her email, she said, and thank you, Jessica Buell, for responding, both then and today. She said, just so you know, we have gone out to bid 4 times for the installation of Common Threads and haven't received any bids each time. We're being creative and trying some different options to see if we can get it installed another route. It's not because of money. We have the money appropriated for the project. And this morning, as I indicated, I received a second, more detailed response from Councilor Buell, which is, again, appreciated. It indicates nothing is likely to happen until 2024. It also indicated that maybe Common Threads is being linked to a new artwork that would appear where the Arc of History used to be on the island at 551-60, further complicating possibly matters. Common Thread should not wait for another winter to pass. The resolution you'll consider later in this meeting to allocate $361,000 in excess lodgers tax funds provides the perfect opportunity to get the funds to complete this project now. Taxpayers approved the increase in the lodgers fund, saying 14% should go to arts and culture projects. None of the $361,000 is earmarked for this.
Victor, what time is up?
Can I have 30 seconds, please?
If you could just, I know you and you're very good at this. If you could wrap it up in just a few.
I will. As you consider this resolution, I ask that you do what honors the hundreds who participated in the generous donation of Mark McWhirter. If the 551-60 interchange isn't possible, talk with artists about possible alternatives, perhaps ask the community to weigh in. There's been a lot of silence for too long. Why am I interested in this? It's important I tell you this. There was a 6-year-old who participated in this project, and she said, as soon as I heard about this, I pulled out my landscape architecture sketchbook. This is a 6-year-old, and I started drawing pictures, and some of those were included in the project. She's now going to go to middle school, and she's never seen the fruits of her labor, as have hundreds of other people. I've seen city government pivot and accomplish other seemingly impossible tasks over 19 years of covering and producing city council meetings.
Mr. Locke.
I'd like to see it happen again. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Miss Kate Cordis.
Good evening, Mayor Youssef and council members. My name is Kate Cordis. I am a resident of Durango. I'm also the interim executive director for Durango baseball and softball. We are a nonprofit organization that serves all baseball and softball players in our community. There's no similar program offered through Durango Parks and Recreation. Last week, Durango Baseball concluded the spring season with our league tournament, which brought in 34 teams from Bayfield, Dolores, Ignacio, Mencos, and Pagosa Springs. Earlier this month, Durango Softball hosted a similar tournament that included teams from Blanding, Moab, Cortez, and Farmington. These tournaments are not for profit. The baseball tournament in particular is free for all participating teams. The cost to our organization, totaling $5,000, includes field rental fees from Parks and Recreation, City of Durango water and utility fees paid at our Alpine Bank fields, umpire wages, Bob's John's rentals, and field marking supplies purchased locally at Eagle Block. This experience is for children and families from all socioeconomic levels who choose to participate in community-based recreational sports. These teams do have options to play elsewhere. There are similar leagues and tournaments in Farmington, but they choose to come to Durango because of our relationships and marketing efforts. The lodger's tax allocation is for sustainable tourism marketing, and we believe there is no greater signage and advertising than Durango's excellent parks facilities and their staff, running organized fun events for kids, and the grassroots marketing relationships we have built with other baseball and softball communities. Growing these events does not require billboards in Houston, but these events can be the poster children of sustainable, equitable tourism that voters envisioned. As you discuss allocation of your excess lodgers tax collections, I ask that you consider funding these events, which bring young families from Southwest Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah to Durango. This is a very different population than those that would be using electric vehicle fast chargers, but they are important contributors to our economy nonetheless. Families and fans come to games, go out to eat, buy gas and groceries, and then return home. Please consider transferring money from the Lodgers Tax Fund to the Water Fund in the amount equal to our water bills, or transfer the Lodgers Tax funding to the general fund to pay for our field rentals. Financial support would allow us to sustainably maintain, market, and grow these special events for children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone who would like to comment virtually?
No, Mayor, no one has indicated that they'd like to speak virtually.
Okay, thank you very much. That would conclude then our public participation. Moving on to city operational updates, and we're going to start with an assistant city manager update.
Thank you. Jose's missing out, so I'm going to step in and give an update that is just a brief item that's important to me to highlight. Many of you are all aware of our Growth and Momentum Learning Series. We call it GMLS here at the city, that focuses on providing growth opportunities for all the layers of leadership within our organization, that focuses on identified key competencies. And given May is Mental Health Month, our HR team coordinated our GMLS focus topic in May and offered mental health first aid training, which is a national curriculum in partnership with Access Health. And I'd like to share that we had over 60 leaders within the organization complete that 8-hour training, and are not only now certified mental health first aid responders, but are more prepared to assist employees and folks in our community during a mental health crisis. And not only am I grateful and proud of these leaders, but I really want to highlight this resource and this partnership that we have in this community for any other employers or community groups that would be interested in offering that type of work and opportunity to learn to support members of our community, so everyone's aware of it and more aware of it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that update. So important. Appreciate it. Now we're moving on to the housing program update. And I believe we'll have Eva join us.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Eva Henson, Housing Innovation Manager. Here this evening to provide a housing program update. This will be for informational purposes only. We'll cover a variety of the initiatives throughout this evening, just covering a couple of those. It won't be an exhaustive list to be cognizant of time for your meeting purposes tonight, and really highlighting those efforts for the first half of 2023. The goals for the Housing Innovation Division tie with your strategic plan for affordability and economic opportunity. Specifically, these objectives focus on incentives, partnerships, efficient review processes, and other mechanisms with a particular emphasis on middle-income housing. These efforts are also focused on increasing the diverse supply of housing units, which will sustain a multi-generational community and meet needs of the workforce, pursuing new ways to also bridge the disparity between incomes, home, and rental prices. A few things to cover tonight. We'll go over the housing website and a new housing dashboard that'll be coming online here towards the end of the month. Current residential projects in review, we're tracking and monitoring those, as well as certificates of occupancy issued, our ADU for Locals rebate program, Twin Buttes housing compliancy, Animas High School, the former Animas High School site, and a selected developer, as well as some new funding sources. So staff has been working on updates to the housing website behind the scenes and will be released later this month, as I mentioned. A key component for these updates will be for visible, consistent, and accurate information that can be a resource for City Council as well as the community. In particular, a lot of real estate agents, appraisers, and folks wanting to understand, where are we expending money? How are we getting units? Where are those units going to be? Timeline and funding sources. So to break this out on this particular slide, we'll have housing projects. In particular, the sites that will be coming on will be Animas City Park Overlook Townhomes, Gage Apartments, Residences at Durango, and then the Twin Buttes site, which is located on Highway 160 West, just past where the Best Western project is. Fair Share Program. What is it? Where do you find out information about our inclusionary zoning program? We're tracking our route policy research project to update that program, and where are we at in the timeline with the scope of work, as well as affordable housing and our fee offset policy, which you all heard in May, that's new during the study session. Housing dashboard data. This is important. We've been talking about this, but we actually needed to make sure what was the data that we wanted to share, and consistently what can we share. So on that dashboard, we'll have our current residential projects in review. What do we have going on that has 4 or more units? That can be ownership, rental. Does it have affordability components tied to it? Will it be market rate? All of that information will be on that page, as well as, are we contributing anything to those projects? Existing affordable housing inventory. What do we have? We want to make sure we're tracking what we have. We want to ensure that we preserve our inventory as well. New developments, and where are we securing those? As well as certificate of occupancies. Where are we making strides? Where are we getting units issued and deployed in our community? And again, ownership and rental will be identified in those. Housing revenue, where are revenue sources? So we'll be tracking fair share fees in lieu, Twin Buttes transfer fee, as well as the Three Springs transfer fee for transparency. I did want to just highlight for the residences at Durango, the Best Western Motel project. They did submit for building permit application on Friday last week. This is very exciting news. That'll take about a 3 to 4 week review process, and then construction can start to begin when the permits are issued. The Gage Apartments is also underway with construction. We're anticipating COs for building A and B in late July, early August. 14 of those rent restricted units in the 89 market rate. I'll take a step backwards. There's 89 market rate units, of which we have 14 rent restricted. 11 of those will be in building A, I'm excited to share. So we are currently working with a developer on those to figure out processes with Housing Solutions of the Southwest to get those leased up by August. Also to highlight Animas City Park Overlook Townhomes, Phase 1. So that's a 22 townhome project of which we have 10 deed restricted units. 3 of those will be income restricted in phase 1. Those are anticipated and tracking to get COs issued at the end of July and closing and have move-in dates for those homeowners for those deed restricted units. We're tracking the 6 lighter workforce units. The developer's kind of floating those in between the projects. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that if that'll be phase 1 or phase 2. And then the last remaining income unit, income qualified unit will be in phase 2, which will be later this year. So current residential projects in review, we've been finding tracking this semi-annually twice a year is the most beneficial way to track it and to report out. We were trying to do it quarterly, but the projects just really aren't moving enough in the pipeline between conceptual, preliminary, and often final review to really make a change in that data. So we're going to be tracking from January to end of June and then July to the end of the year. And then we'll be reporting back to City Council and the public consistently for that information on the website. So a change from the last 6 months to now, we've increased that by 2 additional residential projects in review, but we are tracking 24 projects right now. We are also, just for a breakdown, approximately 1,400 of those units are rentals, about 70% of that stock, and then 590 homeownership units, about 30%. Of those, 181 units have affordability components tied to them. I have the projects here, but again, not an exhaustive list of those units. 181 units is more than the last 7 years of affordable housing inventory. We are also tracking certificates of occupancies issued. Again, just a 6-month glance. For January to June, we have 121 COs that have been issued, and a breakdown, you can see it before you. A big part of that is the residential units for the motel conversion at River Roost. We also are tracking additional units in the Gage Apartments we just talked about. So that'll be another multifamily project for this community with 89 additional units. And then we're also tracking Animas City Park Overlook that would add another 22. The reason that I bring this up is because on average, the last 10 years, we've seen about 125 COs issued. For 2023, we are tracking to exceed that average for the pipeline into our community. Another piece that's part of this update is the ADU for Locals rebate program. So we established and created that with the ADU text amendments back in September of last year. The lag time between getting a permit issued, construction, and then getting a CO, of course, we weren't going to issue all of those rebates I didn't envision in 2022. But what I can say is that we got 4 COs issued in 2022, setting the stage for what's our 10-year history look like for how many ADUs. And you can see on the chart, it ranges from 1 unit to 5 units. 1 year we had 11. But on consistently average, probably 5 or 6 units. This is infill density. So we're not thinking at scale, large numbers here. So on average, that's about where we've been hitting. With this new text amendments and with the increased interest because of that and the rebate program, we have 12 new ADUs in the pipeline. That's tracking to exceed the last 3 years worth of inventory as well for ADUs. We also have been working with Twin Buttes towards their housing compliancy. We issued an RFP in collaboration with Twin Buttes Inc. back in April. Back in March. And then we closed that in April. We did receive 2 proposals. And in May, we issued a notice of award to Elevation Community Land Trust in partnership with Fading West, who's a modular manufacturing company and developer in Buena Vista. So this will be the first affordable housing homeownership product on the former Animas High School site, all affordable. And we anticipate right now, we're still looking at the density for the site, but right now we're thinking approximately it could yield about 37 units, but we're trying to get creative with that site and access as well. New funding sources. So we're always looking for grant opportunities or other ways that we can get funding to create new housing. In May, City of Durango and Homes Fund received a notice of award For the next round of funding for the Community Development Block Grant, also known as the CDBG grant. So we've had this in the past with the city. It's a 3-year term grant. So this is kind of like a renew, but it is an increase, and we got the full request for $1,881,400 notified in May. This will be deployed through Homes Fund to provide project delivery, program overhead, and mortgage down payment assistance loans throughout the Southwest region of Colorado. We are also monitoring and tracking Proposition 123 that was enacted by the voters in Colorado in 2022. It contains many provisions that will create more affordable housing through additional funding and planning. The deadline for local governments to opt in is before November 1st, so we'll be coming back to council with some more information as we continue to navigate this. And part of that is submitting our baseline data that sets the threshold of what we need to achieve and build in a 3-year time frame. And with that, I'll leave it for some questions.
Council questions or comments?
No questions. I just want to say thank you for all the hard work. I know how hard you've been going at it, and to move the needle on something it's a long and arduous process. So thanks for at least providing a nutrient-rich environment for some of these seeds to continue to grow, and hopefully we can garner the fruits of that labor further down the road. So thanks for all the hard work you're putting in now for the next 5 to 10 years.
Any other council?
Thank you, Eva. I'm glad that you compiled all the statistics because it presents to me the fact that we are growing the affordable and attainable housing market, plus creating communities for our residents. Thank you so much.
Well said by the counselors, and I would just echo their sentiments. We really appreciate all your efforts. Excited for the live data on the dashboard and the website. That I think that's going to be fabulous for really all of us in the community to help us know where we are and what we're doing. And that gives us such a good base point that we can launch off of as we go forward. So really, thank you very much for your efforts. Thank you. Great. Okay. With that, we will move on to a review of the consent agenda. This consent agenda is intended to allow the city council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests an item be removed from the agenda and considered separately. Can we have a reading of the consent agenda items, please, Ms. Farmer?
Very short today. 8.1 is approval of minutes of the June 6th, 2023 City Council study session. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Do we have a second? With any discussion? May we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Buell,
Yes.
Councilor Woodruff,
Yes.
Councilor Young,
Yes.
carries.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Moving on to legislative and policy related hearings. We are starting with 11.1.1, which is a public hearing to consider an ordinance to amend Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances, delegating enforcement authority to open space and parks rangers to enforce ordinances contained within the code. Do we have a motion, please? And you'll just repeat basically what I just said.
Like I move to have a public hearing.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
I'll move to have a public hearing to consider an ordinance to amend Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances, delegating enforcement authority to the open space and parks rangers to enforce ordinances contained within the code.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Chief Brammer, we have a motion on the floor. Love to have you provide some comments.
Absolutely. So good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Bob Brammer. I'm Chief of Police for the City of Durango. Thank you for allowing me this time today and granting this public hearing for consideration for this ordinance. I'm here this evening and for this public hearing to consider the amendment to Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances, which is going to create the position of Open Space Ranger and Parks Ranger in the charter and creates an enforcement authority for the ordinance within the code. This change would be similar to the authority that's been granted to code enforcement already and to police services technicians, which are two previous positions that are already created within the city and within the code. This would be adding a section under section 2, would be subsection 98. And we thought that was a better alignment, putting in section 2 versus section 19, since section 19 is pretty much autonomy only to the police department. So this would give it a little bit greater movement if this program evolves in the future. But this is just a minor amendment to the existing code and aligns with previous established action, again, with code enforcement and with police services technicians. And it also aligns with the city council strategic plan under enhancement and livability and sense of place. And just to remind the council and refresh the memory, the position of open space parks ranger was created in the 2023 budget cycle. It's been an evolution of process over the years with the expansion of our open space, our parks, with Lake Nighthorse, and obviously with Durango Mesa Park, which is up and coming. We're trying to figure out ways in order to get our enforcement arm out into the community, a little bit deeper into the community, to really provide that educational aspect, to make sure people are in alignment and enjoying our open spaces, our parks and our waterways in a safe manner. Typically, the police officers that have been patrolling these areas have been responsive in nature. They have not been proactive in nature. And when they get out to these open areas, typically whatever violation is occurring is already gone, or we're just being reactive in that manner. So this was really highlighted during the pandemic in the last couple of years. The trails rangers, which the Parks Department has had, also doesn't have an enforcement component to this. So they were struggling with getting people to come into compliance with the rules and regulations that are established under the charter. So this was a joint effort between Amy Schwarzbach, Turi Nykum, and myself, and speaking with Jose, the city manager, to come up with an alternate solution. Currently, we have one ranger that has been hired. We're still in the process of allocating and deciding what duties they overall have, what equipment they're going to need, so on and so forth. So it's kind of an exploratory program. But this portion of it here would allow that component to have an overall consequence, if need be, to make sure that people are in compliance with our laws. Because right now we're seeing a lot of illegal trail building, dogs off leash, refuse, camping, slacklining in the open space, use of motors in non-motorized zones up at the lake. And there's a lot of specialized training that we feel we can get to individuals, and they can go out there and increase the component of that. So it's really about it from my perspective as the presentation goes, but I am here to answer any questions if they should arise.
Great, thank you so much. We will first go into see if there's any public comment on the ordinance. And I think we can also check virtually.
No one has indicated that they would like to speak, Mayor.
Thank you. No, I do not have an ordinance.
No one signed it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I will, public comment is now over. And would council members like to discuss and or ask questions of Chief Brammer?
I just think it's great to be so creative as we get bigger spots and spaces that we're recreating in and using and annexing. And so, thank you for your creativity and constant commitment to our safety.
Thank you.
Other comments? Thank you very much for your efforts to stay on top of this and address, some of the issues. I appreciate you kind of talking about some of the issues that they will be enforcing. That was one of my questions, so I appreciate that. And also you mentioning that they have opportunities for specific training, which I appreciate too. So great. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, with that, may we have a roll call, please?
Certainly, and this will be ordinance 2023-0011. If passed. So Mayor Pro Tem Beal,
Yes.
Councilor Woodruff,
Yes.
Councilor Gaza,
Yes.
Mayor Youssef.
Yes, thank you. All right, now we're going on to item 11.1.2, a public hearing to consider the future land use map amendments for Durango crossings. Do we have a motion to start?
So moved.
Repeat that.
No. Yeah, so I moved to have a public hearing to consider future land use map amendments for Durango crossings, even addresses from 1480 to 1540 Florida Road.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And staff presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Dan Armentano with the Community Development Department. Okay. There we go. Okay. This is a public hearing to consider future land use map amendments, as you said, for Durango Crossings. And before I get too much into detail on what that is and what it entails, I just wanted to talk about how this really hits on some of our affordability and economic opportunity directives from your adopted strategic plan. This is a project that is going to create mixed income workforce housing opportunities for our community. It uses city resources in the form of city-owned land, as well as some incentives. And it's a public-private partnership. So it really does hit on those first three items under the affordability and economic opportunity directives. So again, what we're talking about here is a proposal to modify the comprehensive plan's future land use map. The comprehensive plan is, of course, a 2017 policy document governing land use for the city. The changes, and I'll show you a map here in a second, are focused on an area that's just outside of city limits, just south of the Florida Road and East Animas Road, also known as County Road 250 intersection. And this is a proposal that's initiated by the city to facilitate that public-private partnership to develop workforce housing, again, partially on city-owned land. So here's a map showing the impacted properties outlined in red there. This is the kind of northeastern part of the city. That orange line is actually the city limits that you can see. So just outside of the city limits. The area outlined in red encompasses about 8.2 acres and 14 total parcels. Some of those parcels have a bit of a unique configuration, but 9 of them are city-owned. And as was mentioned earlier by council, the even addresses between 1480 and 1540 will have slightly modified future land uses with this proposal. So to touch on the public-private partnership that has really kind of been the driving force behind these proposed amendments. So back a few years ago, the City Council directed staff to look at city-owned properties that could be used to develop housing, sort of through a land banking strategy. And an area that was identified were these 9 parcels that are shown in red here. These parcels were acquired over 20 years ago for the purpose of a road connection up to College Mesa, up to Jenkins Ranch Road. That road connection, of course, has not yet been built. So those properties were seen as potentially an opportunity to become workforce housing. We put out an RFQ last fall and received some proposals, including one from Ken Trujillo, who is the developer that was selected. Mr. Trujillo owns 3 adjacent parcels, those outlined in yellow there, and basically put forth a concept that would include those parcels with the overall project. It would include the first portion, at least, of that road that I mentioned, connecting to the east. It would just be a dead end road at this point, but we create a 4-way intersection here and could create over 100 residential units. We don't have exact numbers yet. We've got some conceptual plans, but we haven't received a formal application to review the project yet. And a minimum of 50% of those units would be dedicated, deed restricted as workforce housing. So this proposal before you tonight for the future land use map amendments takes a look at the whole area and leads us to a point where we can maximize density for this project to ensure that we get the most number of both market rate and affordable units. So here's the existing future land use. And the first thing I'll note is this orange color is a medium density designation. That's just under 3.5 acres. And that medium density designation is up to 12 units per acre. The brown density on the east side there is high density. So that's the highest density that we have, up to 24 units per acre. And then these green parcels are a rural designation, which is a bit of an unusual designation. It's actually 1 dwelling unit per every 35 acres. These parcels are owned by the city and they're not really developable. They're certainly less than 35 acres. So the proposed changes are here. And first thing you'll note is now there's some pink on the screen. That's mixed use. And the rest of the area is mostly this brown, which again is that high density designation. So this allows, the pink is the mixed use that allows up to 24 units per acre, as does the brown. So with these changes, we would be allowing maximized density, as well as with the pink in the area, the mixed use, potentially some neighborhood scale commercial uses. That would be kind of at the corner of the new four-way intersection there, anchoring the potential development. We're thinking probably some lighter commercial, maybe on the first floor with residential units above. And that mixed use does allow up to 24 units per acre as well. The other change that's notable is this kind of greenish blue color, which is conservation open space. It's about 2 acres. And that area represents some steep slopes that are on that hillside there, greater than 30%. So with these changes, we've said, well, these slopes should be preserved. Our code prohibits development on 30% slopes or greater. And that's really how these lines are drawn. So obviously they don't align with the parcels, but they do align with that 30% slope. So that is the proposed future land use map change before you this evening. Anytime we recommend or propose to change the comprehensive plan, we do like to hold a neighborhood meeting. We had that meeting on May 15th. There were over 20 residents in attendance. Of those, 7 chose to speak. And what we heard for the most part was pretty broad support from the neighbors and from the public at large. There was certainly interest in an affordable or workforce housing development, and some concerns about impacts, but for the most part, support, which was great. There were a lot of questions about design. We don't really have those answers right now, but I think we can certainly expect a lot of future public engagement as this moves forward. As for comments that came into the Planning Commission, which occurred on May 22nd, there was one written comment that expressed opposition to the high density designation based on impacts to the hillside and potentially to the traffic on Florida Road. And then there was one verbal comment in the meeting that expressed or encouraged really considerations for wildlife impacts, traffic impacts, and also fire mitigation along that hillside. The Planning Commission's discussion on this topic really related to the hillside development, encourage preservation of the hillside. They also talked a lot about the mixed use designation and the density changes. And then of course the broader goals of the partnership. They were very supportive. They did find the amendments to align with criteria from the Land Use and Development Code, and they recommended adoption on a 5-0 vote. So just briefly on the next steps for this one, obviously this is a really exciting project. This evening, you all will be considering the map amendments, of course. If those are approved, then the development review will likely begin probably in the coming months. We're sort of working with the developer, and it's on them to submit their application. I know that the development team is working on that, and we'd be anticipating that to come in sometime this summer or early fall. The first step will be an annexation and a conceptual plan development review. That's going to be a pretty substantial lift. We'll be working on an annexation agreement that's going to really lay out how the partnership is going to work. So that may take probably through the end of the year. Following the approval of that, there will be preliminary plan development reviews. Those may come in phases. So each of those, the annexation and conceptual PD, as well as any preliminary PD proposals, will come before you all for your approval. So there will be at least 2 more hearings before City Council, probably more if the preliminary PDs come in as phases. So to conclude, the future land use map amendments do align with the Land Use and Development Code standards and our adopted plans. The amendments do fulfill the city's obligation for the city's first obligation for this public-private partnership that will result in some workforce housing. And the amendments at this point do seem to have the support of the community. Thank you, Mayor. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you so much. All right, I appreciate it. With that, I'm gonna open the public comment and we're going to limit public comment to 3 minutes. I want to see if first if the developer or contractor is here.
So the city is the applicant. I think the developer's listening in, but they don't really have any involvement
Comments.
in this
Okay,
process.
wonderful,
Yep.
wonderful. All right, is there any other public comment? Anything virtually?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Actually, sorry, no, someone did just raise their hand, sorry. But,
Okay.
put it back, there we go. All right.
Is someone there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, question, the map that Dan was showing the public, we on Zoom could not see it at all. This, so I have no idea what he was even referring to. And also I live at 1548 Florida Road and actually live on Florida Road. And I wanted to say that the preliminary neighborhood meeting where 7 people spoke, I want to say that none of those people actually live on Florida Road nor are impacted by Florida Road. And so they are not trying daily to get out onto the road itself. So I just want to put my 2 bits in as far as the traffic impact goes and also as far as the wildlife goes, because it is definitely a haven for wildlife back on the hills here. So that's just my 2 bits worth. Good, thank you. Thank you for the map. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I wanted to make sure we got your name. Did you get the
Oh,
name?
yeah, Sunny Hallower.
Okay, thank you. Get it? Any other public comment? Virtually?
Not virtually, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I believe we'll be ending public comment. Do we have council comments or questions?
So I want to make sure you had the right motion on the floor, because I think the motion was certainly germane, but it was just to have a public hearing. If you're going to vote, which I suggest you do, you need to vote on something or have a motion similar to his last slide. Move to adopt the proposed future land use map amendments is the key language you want.
Should we be redoing the motion or make an amended
I
motion?
just wanted to be clear in the minutes that the motion that was made, the motion is on the floor. Maybe you should make a new one. Someone should make that motion.
Or an amended motion?
Sure.
Okay.
I'd like to amend my motion, move to adopt the proposed future land use map amendments with the findings as described in the staff report and discussed at this public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. Let's see. Any further comment by council?
I did have a question. So she brings up a good point. Do we know how many community members of the 20 that were there that do live on Florida Road, or these people just that were kind of pro housing development overall?
The meeting was recorded. I could check. I don't know exactly the number of those 7 that were specifically neighbors. My understanding was that at least a few of them stated they lived nearby. I believe there were some that lived on Metz Lane, which is in the area, but not immediately on Florida Road. So.
And then are you planning on doing a traffic study to see how this could potentially impact that density of traffic?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of work that goes into the actual development proposal, including the traffic study for sure, to sort of help design the intersection and the function and how that needs to operate. So yeah, a lot more work to come on this.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other council comment? All right, maybe we have a roll call, please.
Yes.
Council Luttrell,
Yes.
Council Yazzie,
Yes.
and Mayor Youssef.
Yes. Thank you very much. All right, with that, moving on to introduction of ordinances, moving on to 12.1, which is an introduction of an ordinance creating an open space parks ranger position and adding it to Durango. To be clear, I just want to be very clear, this is companion legislation to the matter that passed under 11.1. We've therefore completed the public hearing, but now for process, we'll go through the steps here to assign an ordinance number to it. I'm not expecting further comments or discussion on this topic since we previously discussed it, but I am going to go through the steps. So first, do I have a motion from council? And I believe we're going to need an ordinance number.
Is that 2023-00-11? Is that what you said? Okay, that's correct. I'll move to adopt an introduction of an ordinance creating an open space parks ranger position and adding it to the Durango Municipal Code. And it's ordinance number 2023-00-11.
Do I have a second? Any further council discussion? May we have a roll call, please? Call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Buell?
Yes.
Yes.
Counselor Yazzie?
Yes.
And Mayor Youssef?
Yes, thank you. All right, moving on to 13.1, discussion and possible action concerning possible approval and resolution allocating the 2022 lodgers tax overage. To begin with, do I have a motion from council to begin this discussion?
I'll move to approve a resolution allocating the 2022 lodgers tax overage. Do we have a resolution number? Or
It just may be a scenario where you want to have the presentation by the administration.
first?
prior.
Okay, that's,
Okay, great.
withdraw my motion.
Okay, great. So, wonderful. Staff presentation. Thank you, Tom.
Sorry, hang on one second. Okay, good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Tom Sluice, Public Information Officer. I'm also the liaison for Visit Durango on the Board of Directors. So this will largely be a repeat of what took place at the study session. So what we have basically is $361,000 from lodgers tax collections that need to be allocated by council. And this is specifically for sustainable tourism marketing efforts. And it's going to be tough maybe, but try and keep your blinders on for that particular portion because it bleeds into a lot of other topics. For our strategic plan objective, it's financial excellence and high performing government, and specifically to identify partnerships to leverage dollars, capacities and efficiencies, including grants, which I think is two of the mentions for tonight. The recommended motion is to approve a resolution for a budget adjustment to the 2023 appropriations to reflect an additional allocation of $361,000 of the 2022 lodgers tax related to sustainable tourism marketing for as follows: for sustainability, $133,000, transportation, $100,000, and Visit Durango, $128,000. And I will have this motion at the end of the presentation also, so you don't have to memorize it. So again, the background was for 2022, we had $3.64 million of lodgers tax that was collected. And it was allocated in the following slices of the pie. Right off the top, we took off 2% for an administrative fee. And we also had to hold some money back because of the taxpayers' Bill of Rights. That will be dispersed at a later date based on the November 2022 election. And then for what was left, we have council's 11%, which equaled $364,752 for 2022. Arts and culture had 14% for $464,230. Transit had 20% for $663,185. And of course, the topic of tonight is the marketing for sustainable tourism at 55%, which was $1.82 million of the total $3.64 million collected. So what happened was, of course, of that $1.82 million, we had two contracts with Visit Durango for $1.183 million. We had a destination management master plan for $97,000, and we have a policy set by council for a 10% reserve of $182. When you add those up, you get $1.46 million, which leaves $361,084 exactly that needs to be allocated. So some broad guidelines I'm going to give to you based on conversations with Dirk and some review also by Mark, and just the ballot language. Again, these are all real high level. So of course, the ballot language for April 2021, where the lodgers tax was increased to 5.25%, says that 55% of the money collected has to go for sustainable tourism marketing, including advertising and attracting conferences, conventions, and meetings. A legal interpretation from Dirk previously
was to think about marketing generally as the promotion of the city and the attraction of tourists and other visitors to the city by various means and media. And also Dirk said that council does have flexibility when you're discussing this allocation, so long as the basic intent of the ballot language is honored. So the requests again, at this point, we've got the city's sustainability division, which is looking for $133,000. They had requested 200. And we were recommending from staff perspective, 133 for some additional EV chargers. And I'll get into the details of that in a second. Transportation asked for $100,000. And we were recommending the full allocation because they don't have any other options at this point for their projects for signage. And Visit Durango, as Rachel mentioned previously, requested 245.5, and we were recommending the balance of 128. Add those three up, and that'll take you to $361,000. So I'm going to go just really quickly through the staff requests, and then I'll sit down, and if you have additional questions, you can of course ask at that point. So the EV chargers, really, the big picture is the existing stations have seen a 250% increase in their use over the past year. A sampling of the two stations a couple weekends ago showed 16 unique drivers. I'm going to skip ahead because that does reflect on the benefits portion there that the visitors are the #1 users of the stations for council to consider. Otherwise, this request capitalizes on a rare opportunity for state and federal grant funding. The $200,000 potentially in city funds could be capitalized by a factor of 5. It's a $1 million project that they're looking for. And the state, just from a big picture perspective, has identified Durango as a key location for EV corridors for travel and for tourism. So again, the outcomes, if the 133 is allocated to sustainability, was we would have 4 additional chargers at the transit center, and it would meet the goal of the strategic plan 1.3 of environmental sustainability and resilience, specifically for pursuing funding for infrastructure. As far as transportation is concerned, their request really is based on the comprehensive parking management plan that was completed recently. And the plan noted specifically that the signage and the wayfinding throughout downtown is lacking and inconsistent, and that additional information for visitors in part, as well as everybody else for the customers and employees, is needed to direct users to the appropriate facilities. So if the funding is allocated, that would help improve the inventory of current wayfinding and parking signage. It would help with the development of a signage plan, as well as the design and acquisition of new signage and the installation of new signage. And finally, the third request is from Visit Durango for their events, projects, and grants efforts. They've listed it here in terms of how they got to the 245.5. Local events is 123, which includes marketing grants of 85,000, programmatic events at 38,000. And they are also interested in some trail and infrastructure enhancement projects of 57.5, including adopt a trail programs and bike racks. And then, as Rachel mentioned, their destination advancement grant also. And they've broken it down in terms of their requested fund categories by percentages. So you can see the bulk of it is for local events. And the next largest category is the destination advancement grant. And then it goes further to programmatic events, adopt a trail, and bike racks. So with that in mind, again, the motion is to approve a resolution for a budget adjustment for 2023 appropriations to reflect an additional allocation of $361,000 of the lodgers tax related specifically to sustainable tourism marketing as follows: sustainability 133, transportation 100, and Visit Durango 128.
Thank you so much. With that, do I have a motion from council? Yes, after we get a motion on the table.
I move to approve resolution R 2023-27 for a budget adjustment to the 2023 appropriations to reflect an additional allocation of $361,000 for the 2022 lodgers tax related to sustainable tourism marketing as follows: sustainability, $133,000, transportation, $100,000, and Visit Durango, $128,000.
Do I have a second? I'll second. Can we have now we can have council discussion.
I'll start. If I have questions, like, Marty, can you come up real quick and just, okay, great, making sure. The number of tourists about, just based on like usages, because they sign in and stuff, is about 70%. You're guessing tourists use the EV charging stations.
That's correct. So we don't have access for obvious reasons, like, names and addresses of who uses the charging stations. But what they do track is what's called unique users. And so, when EV drivers use those stations, if they use the same credit card twice at the same station, that only counts as one unique user. Or if they have like a charge point, account card, which is the make and model of our charging stations. So of that, the data shows that we have 75% of our usage is from unique users that are using the station only once or twice. So that's a pretty good indicator. And we also see a large increase. We see a 60% increase on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday charging, which again is a very strong indicator that a majority of the use is coming from one-time visitors.
And the usage from 2021 to 2022 tripled.
Yeah, that's correct. So we do see a seasonal fluctuation, which again is an indication of it's being driven by visitors, the usage that is. But so month to month, so March 2021 to March, or excuse me, you have to start in August of 2021 because that's when these chargers were installed. But if you go, say, September of 2021 to September of 2022, we're seeing about 200 to 300% increase. And you see that consistently month to month, starting from when they were installed to the following year.
Numbers for this year, probably, yeah. But are you seeing the usage? You said the biggest day you've ever had was Memorial Day weekend, this past Memorial Day, correct?
Yeah, so we're seeing really exponential increase both across the state and our stations in general. We recently performed an upgrade. So the stations that exist now were installed as part of a statewide program. So it goes back several years, but it was administered by the state of Colorado Energy Office. And as part of that, we got the stations installed in 2021. They were recently upgraded this last month, and we are seeing just anecdotally and in the data a pretty exponential increase.
Do you want to just stick with Marty while he's up here and then?
Remember your new rule. It's 5 minutes per council.
Oh, right.
And you're on your time.
Other counselors, would you like to comment or questions?
Thank you, Marty, for that information. All at the study session, the last study session, 2 weeks ago, that I wanted real numbers. I don't want, it expanded 50%. Did you come up with those?
So real numbers in terms of absolute numbers of use?
Yes, who used it? Like, okay, so you said you had, 50% increase or whatever. So you had one user, then you had two. I mean, explain it to me how you come up with these numbers.
Yeah, these percentages. Yeah, absolutely.
No percentages, just real numbers.
Sure. So for instance, there are a busy weekend, the 6th, the 9th and the 10th of June, we saw 16 unique users. So 16 unique users, what does that mean in terms of station use, demand on the stations? A typical charging session takes 30 minutes. And so that's 16 people at an average of 30 minutes, that's 8 hours of utilization. So if we're thinking about being able to have the stations open, enough stations open and available so that when someone drives up and is able to use them, I think that's the key number to focus in on. I can, we can give absolute numbers. There were 30 or 31 was our peak number of users in a single day. That's the largest we've ever seen. But I think, again, in terms of looking at just the fast chargers, which we're talking about, like how that connects with tourism, I think looking at that, are people able to pull up and a station is open for them to use when they need to use it?
All righty, thank you for that information, but I have one more question. I'm curious how an electric car impacts our residents here. How would it impact me since I don't have an electric car and I have no need for an electric charging station?
Absolutely. I think that's a very fair question. And I think this is an opportunity to address the perception that electric vehicles are only for, wealthy individuals. I don't want to take all of council's time tonight, but the short answer is that across the board, all manufacturers are shifting to electric vehicles. And this graph really shows that exponential increase in electric vehicles. So even if folks' cars aren't currently electric, there's a very good chance your next car will be electric. Sure. Yeah. And regarding, the affordability piece, if these stations are owned by the city, we have the opportunity to set rates. And in the future, we could even do a program where, there's an income qualified program similar to how we do with water utility. We have control over how much we're charging for folks to use these stations. If fast chargers are installed by private entities, we have they're essentially like gas stations. We have no control over that. And that could be a route that our community would take. But the benefit for affordability for fast charging specifically is, again, that opportunity to adjust rates. I will also say fast chargers are what folks that don't have access to any other like at-home charging can also use.
Sorry. But just one point of clarification, Councilor, and Mark, you can help me on this, is that whether or not it affects you as a local resident might be outside of the scope of this discussion, because this is about 55% of sustainable tourism marketing funds.
I would agree, but the council lady has the right to say anything she wants during discussion up here.
Also, I would like to make one point. I'm asking Marty, since that's his area of concern, and I appreciate your knowledge, but I believe that Marty can answer the questions on his own.
Okay, I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay. Counselor.
My 5 minutes up?
It is actually very much. We have different watches, but according to it is, but you will have 3 additional minutes at the end.
Yeah. And we're gonna need to do something different for a timer going forward with meetings, just so it's obvious to everyone where we are with it. I know you can do it on there. This is just kind of a timeout here, but we'll get that down the road where there's a separate timer for you guys so we can see these things and have the timer running.
That'd be great. So everybody could see it. That would be wonderful.
We're just doing the best we can tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Get ready to start date time. Okay.
He's got his rehearsed.
So while I agree that all these programs are needed and deserve funding, I feel that allocating these funds sets a precedent that we cannot walk back. By allocating these funds that are supposed to go towards tourism marketing for Durango, we open up Pandora's box and then can tie almost anything to tourism and marketing services. Who is to say that this money can't also be used for the library? No offense, Luke. As that also draws tourists to our great town. Why not use some of this money on our water and wastewater facilities as tourists also use those services? I fear that council now and in the future can use their own discretion of allocating money that the voters decided should go towards marketing services for Durango if we set this precedent. As a body, we decided that Visit Durango was the mechanism in which we facilitated those services, and I feel that we should continue to let them work within the financial allocations the voters agreed to. Again, the programs in transit and sustainability are needed and I believe have value and merit. To me, the spirit behind the lodger's tax allocations as set forth by the voters need to be held up by this body now and in the future. If we decide that reallocations are needed, then we should go back to the voters and decide where it's important for them to see these funds go towards. By allocating these funds towards something other than direct marketing for our town, I feel that this leads to a slippery slope for decision-making further down the road.
Thank you very much. Counselor Wood, that's it. That's okay.
Actually, since I still have 5 minutes, Tom, can we go back to the slide? Sorry, not that one. I want to see when it was talking about marketing and the definition around marketing services. Yeah. So 55% for sustainable tourism marketing, including advertising and attracting conferences, conventions, and meeting. Former city manager or city council or that guy, Nelson, promotion of the city and attraction of tourists and other visitors to the city by various means and media. With all due respect, I don't think people are going to come here for our EV stations. I think it's a convenience. I think it's super important that we have them, and I don't want to miss this great opportunity. But I feel like there's something larger at stake about the spirit of what the voters decided on. Again, I feel like transportation, I feel like we could really use these signs to help our tourists, but I don't think that tourists are coming here because we have good signage leading them around town. So I know this allows us some flexibility, but I really fear that we are going to be able to tie anything to this. And now instead of 55%, it's going to be winnowed down to whatever else that we decide, because we as a body have different ideas about how that money should be spent.
Thank you, Counselor Woodruff. Okay, I guess I'll take my turn. I am looking also at the same slide and Mr. Nelson's review that promotion of the city and attraction of tourists and other visitors to the city by various means and media. And I believe that was seconded by Mr. Morgan.
Yes, I was asked to look at his interpretation of the tax allocations, and that's where these quotes come from. And I agree with his interpretation and his advice to you prior to my taking the position.
Thank you for clarifying that. So my thought is that I do want to make Durango a preferred destination for eco-conscious travelers. And I do believe that more fast charging stations will help. It's a function of time, while simultaneously demonstrating our commitment to sustainable mobility. And I also think that investing in parking signage will improve traffic flow and reduce congestion by guiding drivers to available parking areas. It will also alleviate frustration, helping visitors and tourists easily locate parking spaces, encouraging them to visit and support our community and our businesses. So that's just my thoughts for my first round of comments. And I think we can go into a second round of comments for 3 minutes each if council would like further discussion. Remember, we have a motion on the table.
Okay, 3 minutes, better start the clock. I also feel like we need to follow the what the ordinance said about 55% for sustainable marketing. And I also look at this proposal and there doesn't seem to be the 11% also for the council to allocate. So I would like to make a motion that we table this resolution and start with a new resolution that includes possibly more money for tourism. I'd like to have the 11% allocated for the council's discretion. And then I would also like to see the ordinance adhered to about how we're supposed to allocate tax dollars correctly. I would not like to see us move forward just because we need to get a resolution through right now, but we need to follow the letter of the law. Thank you.
And it's suggested that if you table it to a specific meeting date in the future. if I understand correctly. I wasn't sure, you said the word table, but you also said some other things that may indicate you want to amend the motion. So I would ask you to clarify what your intent is.
We should table it to time certain for the next council meeting so we can in the meantime have discussions about how we would like to allocate the rest of this this revenue.
It's clearly a motion to table, and you can take discussion on that, and you should put some type of limit on the discussion. The motion, or actually a motion to table, it does require a second.
Do we have a second?
So hearing none, the motion to table would fail.
Okay, hearing none, the motion to table currently fails.
Back to the motion on the floor, which is the motion that's, it is the recommendation of the administration.
Back to the motion on the floor. Yep, that was previously made.
So I have a couple comments, but real quick, the 11% has already been determined by the past council for the last little bit. We already determined, and I don't actually remember off the top of my head, Aaron, but I don't know, I can't remember if that was was that housing? Transit, housing and transit, I think, or just transit? I don't remember. The last council did already utilize that for the past council. Now, next year, we'll be able to redo council determination, but we've done that one already. Okay, but back to what I was going to say, I would agree that we want to not go down a slippery slope. And if you're wanting eventually someday to look at redoing ballot language, we've talked about that. Both Councilor or Mayor Youssef and I have agreed that like we wanted to see this through, what voters voted on, and see it through and see the effects that having a destination management plan and sustainable tourism do for our community before we go back and change the ballot language. I would like, if that were the case, I would love to have a cap on the marketing, like 55% and like a cap on the amount of marketing money we spend, because I don't feel like we need to spend more than $2 million on marketing personally. And so when we're thinking about that for future, just thoughts, I agree that having EV chargers, more of them, brings those people to Durango. People look for those fast chargers to come to a destination. And so I think it's a great use of funding. I think signage and parking is a great use of helping tourists have a great experience. And then I think that even like you say slippery slope, like Visit Durango has even taken our like thoughts and made these great grants for local programs. So it's not straight going into just marketing. And so like being creative, and I think that's a great thing. And Visit Durango has even done it before. And I think that it is, you know, I think it's a great thing to be creative and use this money in the ways that fall in line with that.
Thank you, Council Bill. Council Woodruff.
I mean, you really do bring up great points, Jessica. And I guess for me, being in the industry that I'm in, you know, restaurant beverage, in a tourism driven economy, I guess what I don't want to see is that, you know, I feel like we've done a really good job with marketing Durango, and we're at the top in a hyper competitive environment, especially coming out of the pandemic. You know, we were trying to, you know, scratch every penny we could to get people here. And it's easier to maintain while you're at the top. What it's really difficult to do is to try to claw back up to the top. And so what I don't want to do is, if we potentially have fewer monies available to stay at the top and be height of mind for tourists to come to Durango, I feel like that we lose in the medium and long run. And so again, I really feel like the EV chargers and it's the signage. I wish there's a way to turn 2 nickels into a quarter, but unfortunately that's not the reality. Because I see the value of, from a tourism standpoint, to have those EV chargers. What I don't want is somebody that doesn't value tourism in our economy coming into the dais and being like, oh, well, they decided that we can do this, so I'm going to say that we should allocate this money somewhere else.
Thank you, Councilor Woodruff. Councilor Yazzie, do you have further comments? Or did you speak twice already? Okay, you did speak twice. Okay.
You have a little time left because you made a motion to table and that didn't pass. So I would say she probably has half her time left.
Okay, would you like another minute and a half?
Okay, I see the value in promoting tourism in Durango because we are a tourist economy. You know, I feel like we already gave over $1 million to sustainable light bulbs. One of our first votes. I don't see the value in putting in more chargers at this point for people who have Teslas. I just can't go there. I will be a no vote on this because of that. I do think we need to rethink some of our strategies here because, you know, what I hear on council is that we're going for all these highfalutin things when we need to start thinking about regular people and what we need to, provide for, say, like transportation. We do need marketing for tourism. I just think the way this proposal was presented with the categories already predetermined before we even got to look at the grant applications. I don't even know if there's maintenance involved with the grant application from Marty, you know. So there's a lot of gray areas involved here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'll just conclude with my thoughts that we're talking about an overage, $361,000. I think that staff, in my opinion, has done a really good job thinking about items that will have a pretty significant, in my opinion, influence on tourism and visitors who come to Durango. Signage through, after we heard our parking study, that was a big one that they really said will help alleviate some of the frustration and congestion and just direct people to where they should be going. I'm a believer in the eco-friendly tourism, trying to attract people who need to charge their cars. It's going forward. It's happening more and more that people are buying electric vehicles. To have to come and wait in line in Durango for a period of time is probably is less than ideal. So I'm interested in the idea of getting to 6 charging stations and becoming a destination for people to come to for that purpose. Not everybody has an electric vehicle. I don't either, but I believe in it. And I think that for those who do, I'd like to try to meet that need. So I think it helps from the tourism and sustainability as well. So that's just my comments on that. And I believe now that we are done with our commenting, I think we can have a roll call with the motion on the table.
Mayor Pro Tem Buell,
Yes.
Councilor Woodruff,
No.
Councilor Yazzie,
No.
Yes. So therefore, the motion does not pass.
Motion fails.
Motion fails.
Okay, is there a clarification? You know, so what happens with that overage since the motion didn't carry?
It sits until you get a majority vote to spend it. So you'll have to wait. I'll entertain an alternative motion.
Can I have make an alternative motion?
If a motion fails, prior to moving on, you can see if anyone wants to take an alternative motion or a substitute motion.
I would make a motion, just continue. Okay, yes.
That motion failed, but you can make another motion. I'd like to make a motion to allot the overage to Visit Durango for their, well, I guess I'd want to know if Visit Durango could.
The other option,
Table it, yeah.
I'll make a motion to table the discussion until July 5th and have the continue the discussion at that time.
I'll second.
Discussion from council.
I do believe in discussion.
You're getting what you want.
So, yeah. are we going to discuss now, or do you want to like do this
The only
in a
thing
study
to discuss
session?
now is whether or not you're going to table it to the next meeting. Not the merits of the motion anymore, not any alternative plans, just whether or not you have any comment on tabling this until the July.
No, I think we should table it till we call next meeting.
Any further discussion? All right, may we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Beal.
Yes.
Counselor Woodruff.
Yes.
Counselor Yazzie.
Yes.
Mayor Houston.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 13.2. Discussion and possible action regarding resolution to implement an enhanced demand-based parking strategy at high occupancy parking meters. Ms. Hill. Okay. Shall we start with staff presentation or motion?
That's kind of thing you're gonna have to, I mean, you can do it either way. So do whatever your gut feeling is. If you want to get a motion on the floor first, you've got a beautiful motion up there. If you want to do that, that works too.
All right, may we have a motion from council, please?
Wait a minute. This is the wrong presentation, Tom.
We had a motion up there. Will you put it back up?
It was the wrong.
It was not the right. Oh,
The
well, we can start with a staff presentation then.
enhanced demand.
Let's start with a staff presentation.
Okay. I do have the motion right here. Thank you, Tom. Okay, so good evening. Sarah Hill, Transportation Director. I'll just kind of get started and we'll look for the slides. So staff is seeking approval of a resolution to implement the demand-based parking strategy recommended in the comprehensive parking management plan. Do you need in here? Sorry, excuse us.
I see the motion.
Now it's. But then it goes to the housing program. We can just share it from the PowerPoint.
One sec.
Perfect. Okay, I'm afraid to touch anything. Here we go. Okay, so here is our recommended resolution. We are recommending a resolution authorizing an enhanced demand-based parking strategy at high occupancy meters during peak seasons and to authorize the administration to lower or raise rates not to exceed maximum rate of $1.50 per hour in conformity with the comprehensive parking management plan. And I will describe what all of this means after a motion is on the table. Is that right, Mark? We're seeking a motion.
For this one, I'm actually doing the motion.
Okay, I move to approve a resolution authorizing an enhanced demand-based parking strategy at high occupancy meters during peak season and to authorize the administration to lower or raise rates not to exceed the maximum rate of $1.50 per hour in conformity with the comprehensive parking management plan.
Do we have a second? I'll second. Okay, now may we have staff
Okay,
presentation?
sure. Thank you, council. So in the strategic operating plan, which is the companion to your strategic plan, staff was directed to finalize a parking study to understand parking supply and demand and identify transportation demand management solutions, including resource needs and outcomes. So that plan was adopted in January 2023, and it makes a number of short-term demand management solutions, and one of those being the demand-based parking pricing, specifically during a peak season.
So demand-based pricing means that we lower or increase meter rates based on the typical peak occupancy of each block. Or the higher a parking space is in demand over a period of time, the higher it costs to park there. So this strategy recognizes the value of our public right-of-way. It advances our climate and sustainability goals, responds effectively to user behaviors, and achieves parking management initiatives like space turnover. So the city code states that parking meter rates are set by resolution by the city council. The demand-based parking strategy does require small adjustments multiple times in the year. So our peak season is defined in the plan as May 1st through October 31st. So we will be seeking resolution to raise and lower those prices twice a year. The adopted parking plan recommends an increase of on-street parking by 25 cents an hour on blocks with an average occupancy of 80% or higher for the peak season. So on this slide, you can kind of see what the plan identified for us was that we really do not have a parking supply problem. Those green and blues are less than 50% occupied. What we have is really concentrated parking in some peak demand areas. So the whole purpose of passing this demand pricing is to redistribute some of the parking from the high demand areas to other parking supply in the town. We're also requesting administrative ability to raise and lower pricing according to that peak season up to the maximum limit of $1.50. So outside of the May to June or May to October quarter increase, any other resolution requesting meter changes would come, or any other request would come to council for a resolution. The impact this summer is that on blocks with an 80% average occupancy, so we have to have on a block, the majority of those spaces have to be occupied 80% of the time. The impact of this request would be that at meters that cost $1, they will be $1.25. And at meters that cost 75 cents, they will be raised to $1. And then I did want to just remind council that we did implement the free parking pilot program this summer, and that was using the 11% discretionary lodgers tax. So we have free transit through the summer, and then the free pilot program that is on 7th, 8th, and 9th Street west of Narrow Gauge. So this is an opportunity to provide locals with kind of off the peak demand areas. And that brings us back to the recommended resolution, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So you do have a motion on the floor with a second, so you can go straight into council's question.
Thank you very much. Motion on the floor with a second. Okay, Counselor input, yes.
Thank you for that information. I was curious, do you know how much more revenue you would get into your department based upon your guess here?
We have not estimated what the impacts to the revenue would be yet. That's something we're going to be working on during our budget season. So when we come with our department budget and the identified revenues, we'll have a better estimate for you. But the comprehensive parking management plan did not go so far as to identify potential revenue increase.
That's all I have.
So have you identified other Colorado mountain towns and kind of what they charge and what their, rate for parking is?
So I'm looking to my parking manager.
Wait, I'd love to hear you.
So can you come to the, we'll have Wade Moore, parking operations manager, come to the microphone, please.
It varies really dramatically. If you were in Aspen, you'd be paying $4 an hour. You'd be limited to 4 hours within the region, at which point you'd have to leave. If you want to look at Breckenridge, they're in about the $2 range. But Grand Junction is 50 cents an hour. They have a lot of free parking lots just behind all the buildings, which we don't have in this town. So what we're trying to do with that 25-cent increase is get people to move off of Main Street so your customers can come to Main Street and the employees then migrate to the areas that aren't being used.
And then what sort of public outreach and input were you guys able to go through for, did you guys talk to bid? What was their kind of
Yeah,
sentiment?
Tim's been heavily involved in this process and he believes in trying to manage parking usage. And he realizes and recognizes that we have a lot of employees and owners that are parking on Main and in the blocks just off of Main. And he has pushed through the bid trying to get voluntary compliance, and it hasn't worked very well. So far, I believe he supports that.
And then I would also add that this is just an implementation of one of the strategies recommended in the parking management plan. And we had a very comprehensive public outreach phase for that plan. We had a survey, I think that received about 1,000 responses. We had several public meetings. So the recommendations in the plan have been vetted through the public process.
Thank you.
Do you have a way to gauge with the free parking, have you measured what it was like before and then what? Okay, great. I'm just making sure you're gonna be able to compare and contrast, with the free parking, we've seen this increase.
So the free parking started June 1st. We don't have complete results, but we count the CBD at the meters once a week. We also count the entire area around the central business district, over to the hillside, and everything that's available free and paid. And so we will have June numbers here pretty quick. I can tell you anecdotally, if you were to look at those maps that we had just a moment ago, those 3 blocks are virtually empty all the time. They average about 3 vehicles on those 30 spaces in a month, or per day, I would say, every time we count. Right now, if you go over there, they're full.
Okay, good.
You might find 3 empty ones out of 30.
Excellent. And then same with the increase if that does pass and go through and we implement that, will you be able to track and see if those, blue area have filled up a little bit more, or green, you know what I mean? Have those?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
And part of the comprehensive parking management plan is that we continue to make these counts, and the consultants really like the counts we did. We had more data than any other city they've ever worked in.
For me, I just want to make sure if this does pass and we say it didn't affect it at all, it stayed the same, then we know that's not the route, or it wasn't enough of an increase or decrease or whatnot. Does that make sense? And so we can refine our strategy and go forward and get better. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we'll commit to updating council at the end of our free pilot at the end of September. Right.
Beginning of September.
Beginning of
End of
September.
August.
I keep overpromising at the beginning of September. And then when we, if this does get implemented and we do implement a peak demand, then we'll report back to council periodically.
I sure appreciate all your efforts at being innovative and helping us work to address our, what a lot of people think we have parking problems, but I do see this as a great opportunity to discourage long-term parking, encourage turnover, and allowing more access to our businesses and our restaurants. So I mean, I think it's smart. I also think it gives us, from what I'm hearing, it's pretty it's up with industry standards. A lot of municipalities are implementing this across the country to help alleviate, high demand parking, and it's working, and it causes better turnover. It makes sense. And again, just encouraging people to get to places that don't have that high demand. Money will encourage that, I believe. So I appreciate what you're doing very much. Thank you. Any other comments from council?
Just real quick, well, first off, kudos for doing the free parking. I mean, the employees that I work with over at 11th Street, they make the four block walk. So thank you for instituting something that was, pretty forward thinking. I forgot I was going to ask. Oh yeah. So with this price increase, will you change any of those hour kind of time limits on certain meters, like for the 3-hour, 10-hour, 30-minute? Will any of those be adjusted at all?
As the first phase, the time frames won't be adjusted, is my understanding. There are, some other recommendations in the plan to kind of look into different changes and enhancements, but this as phase 1 is just the meter increase.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I just think if this is implemented and passes, we are going to have to be very careful with our communication with our residents and let them know about the free parking and let them know where the rates have increased and where they have stayed the same. Because I recall when we increased parking tickets, that just was a big deal. So this could be too. So I just want to make sure we're very, very careful with our communication and also communicate the reason as to why I do believe that encouraging turnover and access for businesses and restaurants is important. And so I think we have to be really careful with that communication. All right. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Buell,
Yes.
Councilor Woodruff,
Yes.
Councilor Yazzie,
Yes.
and Mayor Newsom.
Yes. All right, great. Moving on to council reports and actions. Library Advisory Board meeting, Councilor Yazzie.
Yes, I did attend a library advisory board meeting and I found it real enjoyable. People there were really interesting. It was my opportunity to meet Clyde Church, who is also on the advisory board, and also learned about the Friends of the Library, how much they do for the community and also promote the library. And we just had a broad introduction of all the people and discussed some of the issues that may be coming up in the fall. Thank you.
I'm so glad you attended and thank you very much for being the liaison to that board. It is a great board. Other reports and actions?
Yeah, I had the Alliance meeting, which I had two. We had the board meeting and then we had our monthly big meeting or whatever it's called. The first meeting I went to with whatever. I'm such a good with my words today. The first meeting I went to for the Alliance board meeting, we did our 3-year strategic plan. So I was just jumped right in. That was great. We went through the past 3 years because that was the last time they did their strategic plan. We had a little PTSD reliving it through COVID. We did a SWOT analysis of the Alliance. So that was great. And so it was really good to kind of, it was actually a great way for me to get familiar with the Alliance and do that. So that was a great meeting. Then the investor meeting, that's what it's called, the investor meeting. We talked about the Opportunity Now grant with the Alliance and FLC to help grow and strengthen our workforce. I think that's going to be a phenomenal program when it gets off the ground. It's really focused on this grant that they got to strengthen our workforce here, because a lot of business owners are saying like, I'm not getting, like, I have some staff, but they just don't have the skills for management or the skills of, maybe accounting, like to grow them in different ways. And so it's a whole free program to help grow your staff and your workforce. Amazing. Then we had an overview of the summit that's going to be in October for the Alliance. And then airport update by Tony Vicari, which was great. So yeah, it was a great couple meetings.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilor Woodruff.
Yes, I had the Chamber of Commerce meeting this morning, so that was my first one. It was good to, it wasn't as much of drinking from a fire hose because, I've been heavily involved with the chamber for some time. So yeah, it was really good to sit down in the board meeting with Jack and Kim and all the board members. Learn a lot about the new format for the chamber and their committees. There's a lot from the Workforce Recruitment and Retention Task Force headed up by Karen Chesser, who's the superintendent of 9R. She's got some new grant mechanisms for micro credentialing with high school and post high school community members. So just to be able to kind of get folks ready with some of those hard skills for the workforce. So it was really cool to see that they're implementing that program. There's also work being done with sector conveners where they're bringing in together sector and industry leaders to focus on workforce needs, to, talk about what the most valuable needs are for the workforce. The new Leadership La Plata class has been picked for the 2023 and 2024 year. So they're excited about this year's class. The Y Potters, Young Professionals of Durango, are holding their workshops on business startups and how to grow your business. And then more of those classes and dates and times can be found on durangobusiness.org.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Woodruff. And you had office hours today, correct?
Oh, mama, did I.
That's what I thought. And those went well.
Yeah, it was great. I had 6 individuals from our community. 2 were super patient. They waited an hour. There was some confusion on my time, but yeah, they waited and we had some great conversation around what they feel is important in our community. And I was super happy with it. I mean, overall it was a 2-hour office hours, but I learned so much about what people value in our community, and I look forward to kind of doing some follow-up leading from those conversations.
Thank you so much for doing that. And just to remind the community, we have office hours every 2 weeks on a rotating basis with counselors. I'm not sure who's next. Do you know what the date? What is the date?
Dave told me today it was July 6th.
July 6th.
I don't.
Not sure. Just
Dave's gonna
in
help me.
case counselors would like to get it in their books.
July 6th, no, it is not. It's the 5th.
July 6th, 12:30 to 2 at City Council Chambers.
He's right.
Okay, there you have it. Thank you. So mark your calendars for that. I also wanted the community to know that I think it's just really important to get the word out there that we are having a public community forum to discuss the upcoming capital improvement projects. That is hosted by our Financial Advisory Board. And that is on Wednesday, June 21st at the Durango Community Recreation Center from 5 to 7 p.m. All residents, business owners, community stakeholders are invited to attend and participate. They're going to be talking about the proposed 2024, 2028 capital improvement project plans. And I think it's an important time to be involved if you want to have a say in Parks and Rec projects, multimodal projects, streets projects. This is a great opportunity. So I just want to make sure I got that word out there. Any other thoughts? Go ahead, Councilor Yazzie.
Yes, I was thinking about going, okay, so this is just for my clarification. So I don't end up in an ethics violation. Okay, so if I attend that meeting, I can ask questions.
I'm going to turn to Mark for that.
I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention.
Okay,
to it.
okay. You can.
What type of meeting is it? I heard that it was a community.
It's a financial advisory. You can ask, I believe you can ask questions. She's just asking if she can financial advisory board meeting and ask questions.
I thought you said a public forum.
It is a public community forum is how we're talking about it on our website.
Okay. I mean, yeah, it depends. I mean, if they're gonna actually vote on a recommendation to you about some financial matter, I wouldn't go and ask questions. If you want to go as a member of the public and observe their discussion, go observe it. But you get into ethical trouble if you start trying to do anything that could be interpreted as manipulating a recommendation that's going to come to you at some point in the future.
But when you,
Go and listen, but say, okay, but don't ask any questions. then.
because when you start asking questions and you're kind of telling them how you're feeling and thinking as a counselor, as one counselor, it can sway them. Does that make sense? And so when we become counselors, we kind of have to put some of our personal privileges behind.
Well,
unfortunately.
also you will get your opportunity when we have the discussions as a council, when we're reviewing the capital improvement projects.
They're an
Okay.
advisory board, so the idea is you take their advice without having input into what their advice is. Once they give you the advice, you can question it and ask your own questions of the administration and the facts as to why they gave you the advice that they did. But it is public meeting, like Councilor Woodruff said, you can certainly go and attend. You just need to be very cautious. And if you have any concerns, just let me know and I'll be there. And if you get someplace I'm uncomfortable with, I'll stop you.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can add, if you have specific questions or want to have a better understanding about the capital improvement projects, we're happy to set up conversations and have staff attend your one-on-one with Jose or have staff help with that too, separately.
Thank you for that clarification. Very much appreciated, everybody. Yes.
If just before you adjourn, are you about to adjourn?
Yes.
I mean, since we're almost 2 hours early because Jose's not here, slowing it down. I said, just because we're almost 2 hours early because Jose is not here slowing us down, I thought maybe you would like to mention the fact that next month we're going to have a different format for our agenda.
Thank you. Yes, that is a very good point. We will have a new format for our meeting starting in July, on July 5th, completely new processes of how we're going to conduct our business and do our ordinances and public hearings, as well as opportunities for community input. Some of the, and I might have you chime in as well, Mr. Morgan, but We're,
It's just a new agenda format that both the city manager and myself are more familiar with. It's designed to give more opportunities and make the discussions and the flow of the meeting more user-friendly to the public. It should be easier to follow, more logical, easier for you guys to communicate, to hear and be heard. And it'll be new and it won't be set in stone, and we will work with it and be flexible with it, but it's an agenda that works very well in other communities that just makes it a little bit easier for everyone to understand what's going on.
I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to trying it. Efficient, effective meetings are always good, so.
You just keep Jose away.
Right.
Aaron, you got it?
All right. All right, thank you very much. With that, I believe, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Right, everyone.